season from those two men there. Really good stuff. In terms as well as the analyst report, have a look and see exactly how the team performed up against everyone else in the league. Goals per game, phenomenally good. XG per game, really good. Conceded per game, much better than the league average. The same with the XG against and the shots against as well. Every stat on here is better than the league average, which is a very, very good thing to see indeed from Chelsea. In terms of the scoring side of things, how Chelsea got on, if we have a look, they are up there as the second most aggressive side out of every team in the league, with around about 17-18 shots per game, and they are the second most clinical as well, behind only Newcastle, with roughly, what's that, about 15% conversion rate. So very, very good, very prolific side, a lot of chances and a good conversion rate as well coming from Chelsea using this tactic. In terms of the defensive side of their game though, where do they come along? They have by far the best conversion rate of any team by some distance, less than 9% conversion rate for the opposition, and almost the best in terms of shots faced, around about 8 shots per game they're facing. Very, very good stuff there from Chelsea using this tactic. And overall we can see a treble from Chelsea, a phenomenal season they have had. And of course now we've got to go and look at Wolves and also Brighton. So I'll see you for the Wolves simulation using this tactic very shortly. Here then is Wolves using the 5-3-2 half-back tactic, and they're going to be lining up roughly as follows. Patricio in net with Willy Bolly and Connor Cody at the back. Saiss in as that half-back, Semedo and Marcel as the wing-backs. Then Donka, Martinho and Neves as a very, very strong three-man midfield. And Willian Jose and Raul Jimenez up front as their strike partnership. In terms of where Wolves are predicted in the Premier League, just so you are aware before we do go through the simulation, they are expected to come up there in only 8th position. So a tough year for them, looking like maybe they're going to be top half or possibly pushing for those Europa League spots. Let's proceed on and see how they do get on. Here we are then at the end of the Wolves simulation, and straight away we can see Wolves have had a really, really good season. Predictors, of course, we've just saw only up there in 8th position. They have finished up in 3rd, level on points with Manchester City. 74 points achieved by a Wolves side expected only to get Europa League football at best. What a season they have had. Jimenez, by looks it, had a very good year up front. Martinho in midfield, a very good season too. 18 assists to his name, a really good season it would appear from Wolves using this tactic. In terms of the competitions, you wouldn't even be able to think about it really in current times, but Wolves very well done using this tactic. Again, showing just how good it can work for your team. Of course, we've got one team left to use though, that is Brighton, so we'll go have a look at how their team lines up and then see how they perform using the tactic as well. This then is how Brighton is going to be lining up using the 5-3-2 half-back tactic. Sanchez in net, Webster and Dunk at the back as their ball-playing defenders. White in as the half-back, Lamptey and March as their wing-backs. Bissouma, Pascal Gross and Adam Lallana as their three-man midfield. And then Neil Maupay and Leandro Trossard up front for them. In terms of where Brighton are predicted to finish as well in the Premier League, I'll just show you they are expected to come down there in only 14th place. Very much expected to be in and around the relegation dogfight. So will they be in and around those positions or will they be higher up the table? Let's proceed forward and let's find out. Here we are then at the end of our final simulation, this time with Brighton. And much like those with Chelsea and with Wolves, you can see straight away Brighton have had a very good time in the Premier League. Up there in 6th place, of course, expected to finish down towards relegation spots. They're up there in the Europa League position. 68 points, only 5 behind 4th place Chelsea. So close to those Champions League spots as well. And on top of that, much like the other sides we've seen, Leandro Trossard has had a good season individually as well, scoring 25 goals in all competitions. So have a look and see exactly how they got on in their other competitions as well. So of course we can see with the Premier League up there in 6th, the FA Cup they got knocked out in the 4th round unfortunately by West Brom. Seems to be a bit of a recurring theme, the FA Cup not going well for the sides we've been looking at. And the Carabao Cup, they were runners up. I thought they had actually won it then because I saw the trophy competition there on the screen, but no, they finished as runners up. Even so, to get to a League Cup final with Brighton in only the 3rd season, very, very good stuff there from Brighton and Hove Albion, and also to get Europa League football for next season and be so close to those Champions League spots. A really top season from them there, and really a top season from every side in which we have looked at. Overall though guys, that of course is our final simulation and does bring this tactics video here to a close. And as you can see, the 5-3-2 half-back tactic does work really, really well, and it doesn't really matter what level of side you're using. whether it be a top team pushing for those league and other trophies, everything like that, or a team maybe around top half mid-table, or a team down the bottom end of the relegation zone, you're going to do well with it regardless. Of course, it helps if you've got pacey strikers up top and, of course, a decent halfback and athletic wing-backs. But really, when you look at teams such as Brighton, they don't really have any of those in their locker, and yet they've come away with a very, very good season, much like all the other sides we have looked at. Of course, guys, I really do hope the tactic works well for you. Make sure to go and use those links down in the description. If you do use the Steam Workshop one that I mentioned earlier on, make sure to drop positive feedback and to favourite it as well. And if you did enjoy today's video, do make sure to chuck a like down onto it. And if you want to keep up to date with any more of my content, such as my FM21 Tactics series or my Road to Glory series with Kaiserslautern, then do make sure to hit that subscribe button and to ring that notification bell to be notified when any of my content here on YouTube goes live. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next time. You're playing Football Manager, you've picked your team, you've loaded in, and then you come to this screen and you think, what am I to do? Now, creating a tactic on Football Manager, in all seriousness, especially one from scratch, can be a very daunting process. Of course, there's so much which you have to do, and of course, what happens if it goes wrong? Now, I'm going to try and show you to you that's not necessarily the case, and it is actually a lot easier than first feared. I've got a video here for you to go through, a tutorial on LS Plays FM, which can hopefully help to make life a little bit easier for you when making your own tactics in Football Manager. Let's get into it. Now here we are guys on Football Manager 2021, but before we do get going with today's tutorial, should you enjoy this video and find it to be helpful, please do go and chuck a like down onto the video. It always massively does help the channel out, and if you want to see any more of my content, such as my FM21 Tactics videos, my tutorials, my experiments, or any of my Road to Glory series with Kaiserslautern, then do make sure guys to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to be notified when any of my content here on YouTube goes live. But let's get into this tutorial video itself, and let's go and build a tactic from scratch. Now, this here is my Norwich City team for my Norwich City stream save. I do stream over on Twitch. There'll be a link to the Twitch channel down in the pinned comment. But we've been doing pretty well over there. We're 5 seasons in, we're in the Premier League. We've been using this narrow 4-1-2-1-2 diamond, and generally things have been going pretty well. But today I fancy changing things up. So let's do it, and let's build a tactic from scratch for our Norwich team. Now, the best place to start, in my opinion, when you first get to a brand new squad, especially one that you may not know very well, you may not know all the players, and even ones where you do, regardless of it, the best place to start is in your team report. If you go to the team report and you go to your assistant reports and squad depth options on here, they can really help with giving you bits of information about your team and just to give you a bit of a guide as to what formations may work, what tactics may work, things like that. The assistant report here, it basically gives you a breakdown of how your team compares against the other teams in your league, and it also displays your strengths and your weaknesses. Now, we here at Norwich are quite a decent side. We are one of the best of the rest type teams, so there's a lot of positives for the team. There are also some weaknesses as well. One thing to keep in mind with these lists of strengths and weaknesses is it is entirely dependent on your league. So if you're playing, for example, as one of the biggest sides in a league, then that's great. You're going to have a lot of green on this screen. Let's take, for example, Celtic. Celtic, of course, are arguably the biggest side in Scotland. So inevitably, compared to the rest of the SPL, you're going to have a lot of positives going for your team. But perhaps when you come to face teams in Europe, this chart here may not necessarily take everything into account because it doesn't compare you with other sides outside of your league. So just something to be aware of. But it's still a good place to start with and to see what you're good at and what you're not. Once you've got an idea for your strengths and weaknesses in your team, the next thing you want to look at is your squad depth report. Now, this report is really, really good at getting an idea as to where good players are in your team, how much depth you have in certain areas, and basically where you should look to build around. Now, by default, when you come into here, it will show the formation in which either A, your team is already playing, or one your assistant thinks is the best one to use. You can, however, click on this little drop down here, click all positions. It will then display every position and it will show you how good players are in each of those areas. You can then basically get a good idea of how much depth you have in each position. So for example, in my Norwich side here, we have a lot of depth up front. We have a lot of players available who are very good in the middle of the park. We struggle a bit on the wings, and then at the back we have good centre backs and we have okay wing backs, and then we have a lot of trouble in goal, which is kind of a recurring meme and joke in the stream currently because all of our goalkeepers are always bad, but that's irrelevant. But even so, you can see from this that essentially the main areas of key strengths for us are through the middle here to select formations and see what may work and what may not. So of course currently I'm using a 4-4-2 diamond narrow. Of course I'm not going to be using that because that's what I've been using, but one that may well work based on the players in which I have in this squad, if I go to the 4 defender formations, would be a 4-3-1-2 narrow. It's a similar formation to the one I have been using, but it's slightly more offensive and it could well work very, very well. Arguably, to be honest, defensive midfield is probably the weakest area of my midfield, so maybe we should just scrap it and go with a flat 3 instead. Of course, you would have a flick through whichever formations you want, and if you're happy with it, you can then go and implement it. I'll be honest, I'm looking at this here. Everywhere looks very, very strong, and I think I'm pretty good to go. Maybe right back's a slight issue, but we can kind of work around that. What I can now do, now I've decided I want that 4-3-1-2 to be the tactic I am going to use with my team. We'll go back to our tactics screen, and then on here we can then look to actually implement that. At the moment I've also got this 4-1-2-1-2 tactic on here. If you came to a squad which didn't have a tactic, what you would be greeted with, if I clicked on the plus icon here and do create new tactic, is you'd be greeted with this screen here instead. This is where you go and choose your tactical style. There's real life examples on there. Gegenpressing, so the style of play that Klopp's Liverpool would use and other teams like that. Tiki-taka, a more Guardiola, Manchester City, Barcelona-esque style of play, and there's various other ones on here for you to use. But as we're going to be making one from scratch, we want to do the create your own style one, so I'll click on that and then it asks us to select a formation for our tactic. Now, of course, I've already decided on my formation I want to use, which is a 4-3-1-2. So I'll click the 4 defender formation option on the screen and I'll click the 4-3-1-2 narrow formation. So if I click that, I'll then click confirm and it gets a tactic now selected for our players. Now we've got our tactic built, I suppose you could say. We have the formation selected, but that doesn't actually mean the tactic is finished. Not as of yet. We've told our players where we want them to actually positioned on the pitch, but that is basically all we have done. We still need to tell them what we actually want them to do with the ball and when they don't have the ball and everything else along those lines. Now the first thing I'm just going to do, just to make life a little bit easier, is I want to click the quick pick button just so I can see what my assistant reckons would be the best way for our team to play in the current formation. So it's put all the players in as it thinks would be best, but now I need to tell the game actually what types of roles and duties my players have. And what these are is, as I say, the formation is like the positions in which a player will start in. A role then tells the player what to actually do in that position, and then your duty basically tells your player how far up the pitch or not up the pitch you want them to go. So we'll start first of all with duties. Duties I feel is probably the easiest one to get your heads around first of all. And an easy thing to do and a really useful thing to do is to have the analysis option on here on the screen. If I turn it off, you'll see the screen goes all kind of dark and just has a pitch in the background. If I put it back on, it basically puts little shades of green or red even onto the pitch and basically tells you where you've got a lot of cover and you're going to be able to get into those places and exploit, or where you do not. Now, because of the fact, of course, we're playing quite a narrow formation, on the wings especially, you can see if I hover over it, there are some minor issues. Now, you don't have to take this analysis as gospel and literally try and do everything you can to fix it. Just because there's gaps, I mean, doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. But it does help, of course, to have areas covered where possible. Now, in terms of the duties, because of the fact that, of course, a duty determines how far up or down the pitch a player will get, it can affect this analysis screen on here. So, for example, I'll show you a very good position which can highlight this, and that is the central midfielder, which we have Jordan Henderson here playing in currently. Now, at the moment, he is set to be a central midfielder on support. There are various types of duties available. They normally range from being an attacking, a supportive, or a defending duty. In terms of the attacking, supportive and defending, basically means if you have a player on an attack duty, they will obviously, of course, push further up the pitch and they'll negate some of their defending duties to their other more defensive players. A supportive duty means they'll push up, but they'll equally try and defend in kind of equal amounts. And then the defend means they'll obviously be more focused on a defensive type of play. If I look at Jordan Henderson here, if I right click and we go onto his central midfield role, you see he has a defend duty, a support duty, and an attack. Currently he's set to being on support. If I change him to attack, if you look at the analysis and the green squares on the screen, they all change to become slightly more covered out there on the wide areas because Henderson's going to push up more. If I make him more defensive, he will help out further back, but it will leave more issues further up. So you can see kind of how it works. You have to just use it as a bit of a balancing act. Of course, if you're a more attacking side, you're going to want more attacking players. If you're a more defensive side, focus on trying to be disciplined and keeping goals out, you'll want more defensive players. It depends on your type of players and the way in which you want to play. Now, in terms of the roles, however, they are much more of a way in which you tell your tactic and your players how you want everything to work. Various positions have various different roles available. We won't be able to go through every single role, but I will go through ones that will apply for this tactic. One thing you can do, if ever you're not sure on what a certain role is, what you can do is if you click on a position, let's say the central midfield role that Henderson is playing, if I go and look at a deep lying playmaker here, for example, if I hover my mouse over it, you'll see at the bottom of this screen there is a description which tells you what the role is, and it gives you a little diagram of exactly how the role may work. So it can just give you a little bit of an overview of exactly what roles are. And then when you also hover over the duties as well, it tells you what that duty does in comparison with that role. So it can just give you a nice little bit of info if you didn't know what the role was in the first place. Now, the first halo we are going to start with is most definitely going to be with our flat three midfield. They are by far the most vital to this tactic in terms of how things will work. If we start first of all with Marcus Antonio over here on this left side of our midfield three, with our tactic, we have quite a narrow team, so I wouldn't mind finding a way of getting some more natural width out of my players. So one good way you can do that with your midfielders, if you don't have natural wingers, is you could tell your midfielders to maybe play a little bit further out wide based on their roles. There's a couple of roles which could do that. One key one in the midfield is a Mezzala. A Mezzala is kind of like a bit of a playmaker who plays out wide. It's kind of, they call it a half winger. So that would make perfect sense in this tactic. So I'm going to tell Marcus Antonio I want him to be a Mezzala on support. Now, one thing you can do as well when you're looking at those types of roles is, if you're not sure if a player can do that role particularly well, you can click on their name and you'll see here against their attributes and everything like that, it will list the roles in which they can play and it will tell you how many stars and so on they have for that respective role and duty. And also when you click on a role, for example, at the moment it already has Mezzala support highlighted, it shows you the attributes that player has for that respective role. In terms of Antonio, he is a very good Mezzala. He has very good attributes for that role, so I'm confident he can do it for our Norwich team here. If we go back onto the tactic, I then need to decide what I want Jordan Henderson to do. So if I click on his one on here as well. Now, again, I want some more natural width, but unlike Antonio, I want Henderson to be a little bit more defensive based. So one good role that can do that quite well is a Carrilero. It's almost like a ball midfielder though, but goes side to side type of position, or box to box crossed with a ball midfielder. It's a bit of a mix in between. And with this role, it only has a supportive duty. It's not defensive or attacking. Basically, he will help a bit out going forward and also help a bit out defensively as well. So I'm going to select the Carrilero there for Jordan Henderson, and then the final one I have to decide is my middle of my midfield in Sander Berge. So I'm going to click on there, and I know with Sander Berge I want him to be a little bit more defensive and to try and help our defenders out quite a bit, and I know he's a very good player on the ball, so I'm going to make him a deep line playmaker on defence, so he can kind of sit in front of our defenders and try and pass the ball off to our more attacking players. Now, once I've dealt with that, I want to decide now on my wingbacks. Of course, you can do it in any order. This is just the order in which I want to decide my players on. I know my wingbacks, I want them to push up and I want them to be playing out wider because they are our natural width in this team, and I don't want them to play fullbacks. I want them to play as wingbacks because I know wingbacks are going to do better for me going forward. So I'm going to put them onto wingbacks, and then you have the option of making them defending, supportive or attacking, and again automatic. I want them to be supportive because if they're defensive they'll be too defensive. If they're attacking they'll probably leave too many gaps in behind, so supportive will be a nice mix for my team. I'll do the same with Tagliafico over there on the left hand side. Now next is our defenders, our centre backs, And I'm happy to actually leave the two of these on a central defender on defend. With the defenders, the duties work slightly differently in the fact that you don't have your attacking, supportive and defending roles. Instead, you have defend, stopper and cover. And basically what this means, defend essentially means that the defender will kind of hold his line. It's quite useful playing the offside trap, that type of thing. A stopper means they'll push up and try and get tackles in. A cover will basically mean they'll drop deeper and try and sweep up any balls over the top or through balls, essentially. But in the case of my defenders, they're not overly technically gifted, so I don't want them to be playing ball-playing defender. They're not really bad technically, so I don't want them to be no-nonsense centre-backs. I'm happy them to be kind of a mixture of the two and just be a central defender on defend, and that will go for both Mepham and Sula here in my team. Next up is the goalkeeper, and because of the fact I'm not playing any cover defenders and we're going to probably have a deep line, I want my goalkeeper to be a sweeper keeper. So if I click on that, I get the option of goalkeeper or sweeper keeper. I'll make him a sweeper, and with the sweeper keeper you have the option of making them defensive, supportive or attacking. If you want your keeper to be really helpful in kind of playing and actually starting attacks from the back, you can make him an attacking sweeper keeper. Manuel Neuer is a key example of that, as is Edison in real life. But I want my goalkeeper to be a sweeper keeper on defence. I don't want to be playing too risky, basically. So that's our defence and our midfield and our keeper sorted. Next up is the attacking midfielder and the strikers. With our attacking midfielder, I know that this player is going to be very much key to a lot of the attacks that we have. And in the case of Pedro Gonçalves, he is the Sporting Lisbon attacking midfielder in real life, very much compared as another version of Bruno Fernandes. He is very, very good on the ball. He's very good technically, and I would like him to be really involved going forward. So I'm going to click on his role and make him an attacking midfielder, and I'm going to make him an attacking midfielder on attack. Now, my two strikers, I know in the case of my strikers, they're both quite quick and they're both very technical. I know with Leonardo, he is very good at getting in behind and breaking the offside trap. So for me, an advanced forward on attack makes perfect sense for him. So I'm going to leave him on that role. For Van der Putten, who is a regen striker in our team, he is very, very good all round. He has great technicals, mentals and physicals, and is equally a good passer of the ball. So I would like him to be a complete forward on attack. I feel he could do a great range of different things for this team, not just putting the ball into the back of the net. But that then means that we've decided on our roles and our duties for all the players, and our tactic is pretty much ready to go. Although the tactic may be ready to go, excluding set pieces, which we're not going to cover in today's video, with the tactic, it is basically ready. We've told all the players what we want them to do, but maybe we want to give the team a little bit more information. We could probably use this and it may well do quite well. We don't quite know. But I would like to tell the lads a little bit more instructions in terms of what else they could be doing. The first that I have available to me is my mentality. And what this means is how attacking or defensive you want your team to play, and in terms of how risky you want them to be with the ball. If I click on it, you have various options, which if you hover over will tell you more information about them. Of course, if you're on attacking side, you want to focus on beating smaller sides and things like that. Attacking would probably make sense for you, maybe positive. And then if you're more focused on being solid at the back, a cautious or defensive approach might be the best for you. With our Norwich team here, I know we've got some very good technical players, and we like taking risks and being very gun-ho. So I'm going to go with being attacking for my team here. You then need to decide on your actual instructions. You can leave these all just to the basics and just see how your team gets on. But I'm going to make some changes in here. One thing to keep in mind though, and that is vitally important, do not, under any circumstances, guys, pick instructions which will negatively impact the roles which you have given your players. And what I mean by this is if, say, for example, you have picked no-nonsense centre-backs because you know your centre-backs aren't very good on the ball. Do not then go and tell your players you want to play out of defence, because obviously that's not going to work. It's going to be counterproductive against your team, basically. Okay, so just something important to keep in mind. The first one we want to focus on is the tempo. The tempo, in my opinion, is probably the most important instruction that you can give your team. Now, depending on your mentality, it will have effects on how your tempo works. If I have it on attacking, for example, and we go in here, it starts at being higher. If I change that mentality to being balanced, it starts at being standard. So something to keep in mind, that depending on your mentality, it will have effects on certain things such as passing and tempo. Now, with the way that our Norwich team plays, I know my players are very good on the ball. They're quite good at decision making. They don't kind of break under pressure. So having a higher tempo isn't that bad. If you know your players struggle a bit at kind of making decisions, you don't want them to be making stupid decisions and giving the ball away. Maybe playing with a lower tempo may be more appropriate. But if you know your players are very good decision makers, they handle pressure quite well, they've got good composure, and having a higher tempo and being really quick could work for you. As I say, I know my Norwich boys are quite good on the ball, so I'm going to leave the tempo as being a higher one here. In terms of the passing directness, I would probably rather keep it slightly more direct, because although it means it's slightly more direct, it doesn't mean that they're going to do short passes. They will still do short passes, but I like the fact that if I have it slightly more direct, we'll get the ball up the pitch quicker. Time wasting is an option, of course. I wouldn't advise putting time wasting on until later on in the game, but it is there for you to put on. You then have your attacking width. Now, because of the way we are with Norwich, of course, we're playing a narrow formation. It doesn't make sense for us to be really, really wide because we don't have wingers. However, with us being the way we are, I do want us to have a little bit of width. So we're going to play on a standard width because that will make the most sense, because we don't want to just be too compact and not be able to actually move. We don't want to be playing too wide and trying to exploit places that we don't have. So we'll play with a standard attacking width, and hopefully that can do us quite well. In terms of passing to space, that can work very well, especially if you have wingers and so on who are really, really pacey. I don't think we need to use it here at Norwich. We have good pass on the ball and good players who can get the ball into their feet and dribble with it, so I'm going to leave that as being off. I want to play out a defence because although our defenders are set to being central defenders, they're not bad on the ball, so I'm happy for them to do that. And I want us to focus play through the middle because, of course, most of our technically gifted players are in the middle of the park. In terms of the final third, I'm happy to leave our crosses on mix. I don't want us to really work the ball into box or shoot on sight. I'm happy for the players to make that decision themselves. If, of course, you know you haven't got very good long shot takers, work ball into box might be an option for you. If you know that you've got quite good long shot takers, maybe shooting on sight might be a better option. I'm not going to put early crosses on. I don't really feel it's necessary for me to do that. Again, I'm happy for my players to make that decision. Play for set pieces isn't necessary for us. We don't have an overly tall side, so I don't think that's really worth it. Dribbling, I'm again happy for my players to make that decision, but if you know you haven't got good dribblers, maybe tell them to dribble less, and then vice versa. If you know you've got very good pacey dribblers in your team, you get them to run at the opposition defenders. In terms of creative freedom, I'm happy for my players to be a bit more expressive. We have some technically gifted flair type players, so I'm happy for them to do that. Of course, if you're looking to be a more defensive type side, more disciplined, maybe the way to go for you. In terms of when we're in transition, this is basically, in other words, what happens when either you or your opponent loses the ball. What do you want to do in those positions? So when we first lose the ball, I'm happy for us to counter press. Our team are very good tacklers. We have a lot of good tacklers in midfield, and we are very pacey, and we have high work rate. So I'm happy for my players to really push and try and hassle the opposition as soon as we lose the ball to try and win the ball back. If you know you don't want to do that and you want to focus on keeping your shape, using the regroup option may be the way to go for you. Now, in terms of when we get the ball back, though, I know we want to counter. We are a very quick side. It makes sense for us to try and counter-attack, and I'm happy for us to distribute quickly with the goalkeeper because it can help getting those counter-attacks and playing quickly. Of course, if you want to do it the opposite way around, maybe be a bit more possession-based, slowing the play down and holding your shape could be the way to go for you. In terms of how I want my goalkeeper to distribute the ball though when he has it, I'd rather him give it out to the fullbacks. I think that makes most sense because the fullback should have some decent space to run into our side, and I'm happy for him to choose however he does that, so I'm going to leave that one as blank. Of course, you'll distribute out to the target man. It would make sense to distribute and take long kicks, that type of stuff. Now, the final instruction we have to give is what we do when we are out of possession. In other words, when we are defending. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our lads to play with using the offside trap. Because of the fact we're using two central defenders on defend, they're both quite good mentally, and we should be able to keep our line quite well compact and everything like that. I think it makes sense for us to try and do that. In terms of how we want to actually press, I'd like us to be quite urgent, not the full amount of urgency, so I'm going to keep it around about more urgent, and we want to prevent the short goalkeeping distribution. Of course, if you're looking to have a formation that drops deep, you aren't going to want to press very high because otherwise that could risk making your players push up further than what they should do. I'm not going to use tight marking. I don't think it's necessary. I'm not going to tell my players to stay on feet or get stuck in. I'm happy again for them to make that decision. But if you want to be a bit of harsh bastards, you know, the old Wimbledon and sides like that, you could get stuck in. Or if you want to try and avoid doing too many slide tackles and risking your defenders losing their position and so on, having them stand on their feet could be the way to go for you. In terms of our lines of engagement and a defensive line, because of the fact we're doing a slightly counter-pressing style of play and we want to press quite high, I'm going to push my line of engagement up a little bit, and considering the pace of my midfield and someone, I'm happy that they will be able to get back and help the defence out playing this way. But I want us to keep a standard defensive line because although our defenders are relatively pacey, I don't want them to push up too high and risk getting balls over the top, which could screw us up basically. Now, the final thing you have to decide as well is your defensive width. In other words, how wide you want your players to defend. You want them to make the opposition kind of come inside or go outside. We have a lot of height in our back two centre-backs. We have Sula and we also have Kaglar, Soyuncu and Mepham, who are all decent in the air. So I'm happy to force the opponents out wide so they have to try and get the ball into the box by crossing it. I don't think that's going to be too negative for our side. Of course, if you've got smaller defenders, trying to force your opponents inside might be a better idea for you in order to try and cope with that. But that is essentially all the instructions I have for my tactic here. And in that essence, it means my tactic is basically ready to go. Of course, you're not going to know exactly how it's going to work until you get into your matches and see it actually working with your players up against opponents, and then you'll find out exactly if it's any good or not. I'd be quite confident with this one here that it would be able to do a decent job nonetheless. But of course, with Football Manager, it's very rare you'll just build a tactic and it will just work exactly. It's quite often you'll get into games, you'll find certain things work, certain things don't. It maybe requires a tweak here or there. But that's the beauty of FM. And then when you find one that does work, that is when it is a very, very proud moment, especially when you've built it from scratch. But though guys, that here brings this tutorial to a close and wraps up everything which I wanted to go through with you with this FM21 how to create a tactics video. I really do hope you found it useful and hope to be able to implement it into your own FM21s. Of course, if you do end up going and building your own tactics, guys, do let me know down in the comments how they got on for you. And if you did find the video here to be helpful, guys, please do go and chuck a like down onto it. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it always massively does help the channel out. And if you're looking forward as well to seeing any more of my content here on LS Plays FM, then do make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to be notified when any of my content here on YouTube goes live. But guys, thank you very much for watching here today, and I will see you again next time.
What is going on, guys? Jack here, and please don't be deterred by the video length. This video is a step-by-step guide to how I go about taking over a team in Football Manager without any knowledge of the players of the squad and create a tactical system from scratch. I hope you find it useful. Do drop a like on it if you do. Let me know that you want to see more of these kind of Football Manager guide videos. And well, without further ado, let's get into this. So welcome to this Football Manager 2021 guide. Today I'm going to cover creating a tactical system from nothing. I feel like as a new Football Manager player, or even as a semi-experienced player, one of the most daunting tasks in-game is taking over a club that you know nothing about and trying to work out what the hell is my starting 11 going to be, what tactic, what formation, what system am I going to play. In this video, I'm going to show you how I go about doing this exact process, step by step. I do hope you find this video useful. If you do, make sure to drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And of course, if you would like to see more guides like this, and you have specific subjects you would like to see me cover, let me know them down in the comments. Now, for today's video, my poor team that I'm going to be managing is Birmingham City. And I say poor team as in it's unfortunate for them that I'm managing them. They were completely randomly selected. I've not done any kind of pre-preparation, and I'll be honest, other than Jude Bellingham, who left them in the summer, I don't know anyone on this Birmingham City team off the top of my head, so this should be a fun little example to show you guys through today. Now, the first thing we are on here is the club overview screen. Now, you can see here I have a key player and I have a hot prospect. You may not have both of these players visible depending on the resolution of the screen that you're playing on, but I always like to just come to this screen and just look at who the game thinks the team's key player is before I do anything else. And in this example, it is Mikel San Jose. Now, this guy is not a bad little player. 31 years old. He is a good little centre-back. And he has a little bit of ability about him with also 13 passing and 11 vision, which I really like the look of, because immediately to me that screams ball-playing defender. And of course in FM21, players are now given star ratings for specific roles that they play within. Now, as with all the stars in the game, these are a matter of opinion of your staff. Sometimes I will have a slight difference in opinion to my assistant manager or whoever is suggesting the stars for these. That said, I feel like when you're first starting out, you can trust the stars a fair bit, and as you get more experienced, you may start to use your own intuition to judge things. Now, despite the fact San Jose is listed as our key player, that does not necessarily make him the best player in the team. Of course, if we now come to the team screen, you're probably greeted with something that looks like this. Now, if you don't know this, and I'm sure many of you do, you can come to the drop down for the views, and instead of being on play to the players that